At 57, Keith Urban sat alone in his Nashville studio. No fans, no cameras, no spotlight. Only a mic! And a truth he'd kept tucked away for years. After 19 years of marriage, the man who once sang as if love could last forever finally said the words his audience never expected. But what came out wasn't anger. It wasn't scandal. It was gentler and braver, a confession. Because behind the hits, behind the fame, and behind those flawless red carpet moments was a man who had been quietly breaking and then learning how to rebuild. Tonight, we're stepping into the story Keith never peddled for headlines. A walk through fame. Love, addiction, and redemption that doesn't land in heartbreak, but in peace. And once you hear what he finally admitted, you may never see Keith Urban or love itself the same way. If you're here for the truth behind the noise, hit subscribe, and let's begin. Before the hush, there was sound, the kind that could flood arenas and still feel personal. For years, Keith was country music's golden son, blue eyes, leather boots, guitar slung low, and a smile that made even sorrow sound hopeful. He wasn't just a performer. He was a vision, turning pain into poetry, the kid from down under who conquered Nashville and charmed Hollywood. From the outside, he looked untouchable. The trophies, the cheers, the beautiful wife. The life any kid imagines when they first strum a chord. But fame loves a polished surface. It hides the fractures. Behind that easy grin stood a man drowning, not in failure, but in expectation. Night after night, under blinding lights, with thousands chanting his name, he felt strangely solitary. The louder the crowd, the quieter his soul. As his singles climbed, so did the loneliness, the kind no spotlight can brighten. Fans didn't see the cost of being the perfect man, the one who smiled with a heavy heart, the one who said, "I'm fine," while the silence between shows spoke otherwise. He once said, "Fame isn't freedom, it's just a louder kind of loneliness." You could hear that in the way he bent sadness into melody, every lyric a secret tucked inside a song. When he sang heartbreak, it wasn't acting, it was witness. The applause would fade, the room would empty, and he'd sit with his guitar, asking the oldest question, "Does anyone really know me?" Somewhere along the way, he'd built a version of himself the world adored, and misplaced the version that longed simply to be understood. That was the deeper loss behind the lights. Not only addiction or exhaustion, but being loved for the performance, not the person. He didn't yet know that someone was about to see straight through the glare and change what he believed about love and about himself. But to understand that, we have to go back to where it started. Before the awards, there was a quiet kid on the floor of a small house in Caboolture, Australia, tracing fretboards until his fingers burned. His dad sold instruments part-time. His mom filled the rooms with Merle Haggard, Don Williams, and Glenn Campbell. Those records became a doorway. Keith Lionel Urban wasn't the class clown or the star athlete. He was reserved, a little awkward, and magnetized by music that felt like it came from another life. While other kids chased rugby, he chased rhythm. They teased him for loving American country, old people's music. He didn't care. He heard honesty there. He couldn't find anywhere else. At 6, his father brought home a second-hand guitar. Scuffed, worn, perfect. Keith played until the strings snapped. He tied them back and kept going. He wasn't just memorizing chords, he was learning a language. By 9, he stood at local talent shows, nervous, sincere. Judges smiled. Parents clapped. He went home, replaying every missed note, determined to improve. Perfectionism took root early, not from ego, but gratitude. His parents sacrificed for his dream, especially his dad. At 12, his father did the unthinkable. He mortgaged their home to buy Keith a top-quality guitar. "Make it count," he said. Keith never forgot. He wore that guitar like a promise. He studied tapes of Chet Atkins, copying every lick, slide, and bend. While friends went out, he stayed in, chasing tone, the sound that could make a stranger feel what he felt. The guitar became his first real friend. It never judged. It just listened. By 15, he was playing bars, too young for the room, old enough for the songs. Sometimes the audience was too drunk to notice. He gave them everything anyway. Each night taught him how to win over a room, how to take rejection on the chin, and how to believe when no one else did. Music was the only language I didn't stutter in, he'd say. In a place where dreams were meant to stay small, Keith Urban made his sing, and with that courage in hand, he set his sights on a word stamped on his heroes' albums, Nashville. By the early 90s, he'd outgrown Caboolture's stages. He wanted more, not just success, but a home for his sound. In 1992, at 24, he boarded a plane with a guitar, a suitcase, and stubborn hope. Nashville wasn't golden. It was gritty. 1,000 players believed one song could change everything. He was another face with a Telecaster, sleeping behind thin walls where old air conditioners hummed, and somebody else's practice leaked through the plaster. Sometimes he went to bed hungry and woke up more resolved. He said yes to everything: backup guitar for artists who forgot his name, low-pay demos, open mics that paid in beer, and courtesy claps. Most nights he played for strangers, applauding out of habit. He didn't care. In his mind, every bar was the Opry. He wasn't chasing fame. He was outrunning failure. He formed the ranch with two equally hungry musicians. They drove to rodeos and state fairs, playing tiny crowds for smaller pay. The fire was real. So was the loneliness. Birthdays in motel rooms, cold takeout. Lyrics too raw to sing aloud. When exhaustion hit, he reached for a bottle, first to steady the nerves, then because he couldn't not. Passion and pain began to blur. It's not ambition that keeps you alive, it's hunger, he once said. That hunger kept him up until sunrise, rewriting choruses after a 2 a.m. set. Even when no one seemed to care, he refused to quit. The grind toughened him and refined him. He learned discipline. He learned humility. Most of all, he learned who he was when the dream didn't love him back. Then came the break. In 1999, his self-titled American debut hit radio. Yeah, but for the grace of God. Where the Blacktop Ends. The quiet kid from Caboolture sounded different. Raw, emotional, human. Awards followed. ACM Top New Male Vocalist, the CMA Horizon Awards, standing ovations that didn't end. The man who once played for beer now played for millions. And yet, beneath the success, the old emptiness lingered. He'd escaped failure. He hadn't found peace. Fame demanded flawlessness. Every lyric, every smile, every interview. He was living the dream, but it no longer felt like his. The lights never really dimmed. The expectations never loosened. After the show, the dressing room felt colder than the arena. Applause faded. The hollowness didn't. He reached for the thing that promised quiet, the bottle. First as a nerve calmer, then as ritual, then as a requirement. He laughed louder, stayed out longer, worked harder. Anything to muffle the whisper, "You're still not enough." On stage, he was electric. Off stage, he was at war. Fame didn't free me, he said. It just made the cage louder. Fans saw a juggernaut. Friends saw the cracks. He still nailed the takes. He still smiled for cameras. But pain sneaks into songs. Listen to those records. You'll hear the ache dressed as melody. Each chorus a confession he hadn't yet said aloud. And then, at a glittering 2005 charity event in Los Angeles, fate arrived with a quiet smile. It was warm, star-lit, velvet-roped. He was the Nashville superstar. She was Nicole Kidman, graceful, radiant, and somehow still in a room built on performance. She wasn't acting. Neither was he. They talked, really talked. He joked about being out of his depth among movie royalty. She laughed, soft, real, unguarded. He told her about bar bands and a father who mortgaged the house for his guitar. She told him how adoration can still feel isolating. She didn't see the fame, he said later. She saw the man. He began writing from possibility, not pain, but a shadow still trailed him. Even as he fell in love, he was unraveling. Yet, when she looked at him, he didn't feel broken. He felt seen. When his last tour wound down, there was no grand farewell. He walked out with a guitar and played a new song called Still Here. No lasers. No fireworks. Just 6 strings under amber light. If the world forgets my name or my song, I'll still be here, where I've belonged all along. The crowd didn't cheer at first. They listened. When the final chord faded, he didn't bow. He smiled, small, peaceful, real, handed off the guitar and walked into the wings. No encore, only stillness. He didn't lose Nicole. He found himself, Years of fame, addiction, and ache stripped him down to something simple: understanding. He once believed happiness lived in applause. Now he knows it lives in silence, in who you are when the lights go out. These days, when he speaks about love, he says it rarely ends. It changes melody. Maybe that's what his story has always been. Less about endings, more about evolution. Some stories don't stop. They settle into a softer song. If you believe love can evolve instead of ending, that peace is another kind of forever. Subscribe for more human stories behind the headlines. Somewhere in Nashville, a man named Keith Urban is still playing quietly, beautifully, still here. Note, this video draws on publicly available reports, interviews, and thoughtful artistic interpretation for storytelling. It's offered with respect for entertainment and education.